In a magnificent kingdom where prosperity flowed like rivers and happiness bloomed like spring flowers, there lived a king and queen whose love for each other was legendary. They had everything anyone could desire: wealth, power, respect, but their greatest treasure was their daughter, Princess Elara. She had her mother's gentle wisdom, her father's strong spirit, and a beauty that seemed to radiate from within. The royal family lived in perfect harmony, and their kingdom flourished under their benevolent rule. The source of much of the kingdom's prosperity was an unusual creature, a magical donkey who lived in the royal stables. This was no ordinary donkey, for instead of producing regular waste, this remarkable animal produced pure gold coins each morning. The king's treasury overflowed thanks to this miraculous gift, and the kingdom never wanted for anything. But happiness, however perfect it seems, can be fragile. The beloved queen fell gravely ill, and despite the efforts of the finest physicians and the most powerful healers, she grew weaker with each passing day. As she lay on her deathbed, she called the king to her side and made him promise something that would later prove to have terrible consequences. "My dearest husband," the queen said, her voice weak but urgent, "I know you will wish to remarry after I am gone, and I don't want you to be alone. But promise me this: only marry someone who is as beautiful and as good as I am. Don't settle for less. Promise me." The grief-stricken king, wanting only to comfort his dying wife, made the promise without thinking through its implications. The queen passed away peacefully that night, secure in the belief that she had protected her family's future. The king mourned deeply for a full year, and his daughter Elara mourned beside him. They found comfort in each other's company, and gradually the king began to consider the promise he had made to his late wife. His advisors encouraged him to remarry. The kingdom needed a queen, they said, and the princess needed a mother. So the king sent messengers throughout the land and to neighboring kingdoms, seeking a bride who matched his late wife's beauty and goodness. Portraits arrived from princesses and noblewomen near and far, but none quite matched the standard the queen had set. The king rejected them all, growing increasingly melancholy. Then one terrible day, as the king looked at his daughter, now grown into a young woman of 17, a dark and disturbing thought entered his mind. Elara had inherited her mother's beauty, her grace, her goodness. In fact, Elara was the only person in all the kingdoms who truly matched the description his late wife had demanded. In his grief-twisted reasoning, the king convinced himself that his promise could only be fulfilled by marrying his own daughter. When the king announced his intention to marry Elara, the entire court was horrified. His advisors protested, the priests refused to perform such a ceremony, and the people of the kingdom were scandalized. But the king, obsessed with his interpretation of the promise, and perhaps driven mad by grief and loneliness, would not be dissuaded. Elara was devastated and terrified. The father she had loved and trusted had become someone she no longer recognized. She needed help desperately, but who could stand against a king? In her desperation, she sought out her fairy godmother, Violet, who lived in a cottage deep in the royal forest. Violet listened to Elara's tearful story with growing alarm. "This is indeed terrible," the fairy godmother said gravely. "Your father has been corrupted by grief into believing something that is deeply wrong. We must find a way to protect you while also hoping that time might restore his reason." "What can I do?" Elara asked. "He's the king. He has all the power. How can I refuse him without bringing his wrath down upon myself and the kingdom?" Violet thought carefully, then said, "We will use delay and seemingly impossible demands. Ask him for wedding gifts, 3 dresses that are impossible to create. If he cannot provide them, perhaps he'll abandon this mad plan. And if he does somehow obtain them, it will buy us time to find another solution." Following her godmother's advice, Elara went to her father and said, "If you truly wish to marry me, you must first prove your devotion by giving me 3 wedding dresses. The first must be the color of the sky, capturing every shade from dawn to dusk. The second must be the color of the moon, shimmering with silver light. And the third must be the color of the sun, radiant and golden. Only when I have these impossible dresses will I consent." Elara hoped these impossible demands would make her father see reason, but she had underestimated his obsession and the skill of the kingdom's artisans. The king commanded his finest craftspeople to create the dresses, offering unlimited resources. Working day and night with the finest silks and threads, using dyes mixed with crushed sapphires, moonstone dust, and powdered gold, the artisans accomplished the impossible. First came the dress the color of the sky, a magnificent gown that shifted from pale dawn pink to brilliant noon blue to deep twilight purple, depending on how the light struck it. Then came the dress the color of the moon, a shimmering silver creation that seemed to glow with its own ethereal light. Finally came the dress the color of the sun, a radiant golden gown that blazed like captured sunlight. When the dresses were presented to Elara, her heart sank. She returned to Violet in despair. He's done it. He's created all 3 impossible dresses. What do I do now? The wedding is being planned. I'm running out of time. Violet's expression was grave. Then we must make an even more extreme demand, one you're certain he'll refuse. Ask him for the skin of the magical donkey. The creature is the source of all the kingdom's wealth. Surely he won't sacrifice his kingdom's prosperity, even for this mad obsession. But when Elara made this final demand, the king, now completely consumed by his twisted determination, didn't hesitate. He ordered the magical donkey to be slaughtered, and its skin prepared for his daughter. The court watched in horror as the king destroyed the source of the kingdom's fortune, all to pursue a marriage that everyone knew was wrong. When Elara saw the donkey's skin being brought to her chambers, she knew she had run out of options. Her father would not be deterred, would not see reason, would not protect her as a father should. If she wanted to be safe, she would have to save herself. That very night, Elara went to Violet one final time. "I have to run away," she said. "It's the only way." Violet nodded sadly. "I know. I've prepared for this possibility." She gave Elara a magical traveling trunk that would follow her underground wherever she went, always staying hidden but accessible when needed. Into this trunk, Elara packed her 3 impossible dresses, her jewelry, and a few precious mementos of her mother. Then, in a stroke of brilliant but painful disguise, Elara covered herself with the donkey's skin, pulling it over her like a cloak and hood. The rough, dirty skin completely concealed her beauty, her fine clothes, everything that marked her as a princess. Looking at herself in the mirror, Elara saw not a princess but a strange creature, someone unrecognizable. "The skin is more than a disguise," Violet explained. "It's a symbol of your transformation. You're leaving behind your identity as a princess and becoming someone new. When you're ready to reclaim who you are, you'll shed this skin. But for now, it will keep you safe by making you invisible to those who would do you harm." And so, in the darkest hour before dawn, Princess Elara fled her father's castle. She slipped out through a servant's entrance, looking like nothing more than a strange, hunched creature covered in a dirty donkey hide. The guards didn't even glance at her twice. Behind her, the magical trunk followed underground, and ahead of her lay an unknown future. Elara walked for days, sleeping in barns and eating whatever simple food she could find or afford with a single coin she'd hidden in the donkey skin. She avoided villages where she might be recognized and stuck to forest paths where few travelers ventured. The journey was hard and lonely, and many times Elara wept inside her disguise, mourning everything she'd lost: her home, her father, her identity, her whole life. Finally, exhausted and desperate, Elara came to a large estate with a magnificent manor house. From her hiding place at the forest edge, she watched servants going about their work and realized this might be a place where she could find employment and shelter. Gathering her courage, she approached the kitchen entrance. The cook who answered the door wrinkled her nose at the sight of the creature before her, a girl covered in a filthy donkey skin, dirty from days of travel. "What do you want?" the cook asked harshly. "Please," Elara said, keeping her voice rough and humble. "I'm looking for work. Any work at all. I can clean, carry water, tend fires, work in the gardens, anything. I just need food and a place to sleep." The cook was inclined to send her away, but the manor was short-staffed, and there was always need for someone to do the hardest, dirtiest jobs that no one else wanted. "Fine," she said grudgingly. "You can work in the scullery, washing dishes and cleaning. You'll sleep in the attic and eat after everyone else. And for heaven's sake, you smell terrible. We'll call you Donkeyskin since that's what you're wearing. Now get to work." And so Princess Elara became Donkeyskin, the lowest servant in the manor household. She scrubbed pots until her hands were raw, hauled water until her back ached, and cleaned fireplaces until she was covered in soot. The other servants looked down on her and avoided her because of her strange appearance and smell. She was lonely and isolated, but she was also safe. No one would think to look for a missing princess among the scullery maids, especially not one disguised as Donkeyskin. The estate belonged to a widowed duchess and her son, Prince Philippe, who was kind-hearted and respected by all who knew him. He rarely noticed the servants, but he ran the estate fairly and treated everyone with basic dignity. Elara caught glimpses of him occasionally, and she couldn't help but notice his handsome face, gentle manner, and the way he spoke kindly even to the lowest servants. To preserve her sanity and remember who she really was, Elara would retreat to her tiny attic room on Sunday afternoons when she had a few hours free. There, she would summon her magical trunk, draw out one of her magnificent dresses, and transform herself back into a princess. She would wash carefully, arrange her hair, put on one of the impossible dresses, and simply sit by her small window, remembering that she was more than Donkeyskin, more than a scullery maid. These brief moments of reclaimed identity kept her spirit alive during the hardest times. One Sunday, as Elara sat in her attic room wearing the sky-colored dress, she didn't realize that Prince Philippe had returned early from hunting and was walking in the garden below her window. He happened to glance up at the attic window and caught sight of the most beautiful vision. A young woman in a magnificent gown that seemed to contain all the colors of the sky, her face serene and lovely in the afternoon light. Philippe stopped in his tracks, stunned. Who was this mysterious beauty in the servants' quarters? He had never seen her before, never even suspected such a person existed in his household. By the time he thought to call up to her, she had moved away from the window. He rushed into the manor and up to the attic, but when he arrived, he found only the strange girl called Donkeyskin, covered in her usual disguise, pretending to sleep. "Excuse me," Philippe said, confused. "I'm looking for someone, a young woman in a beautiful dress. She was at this window just moments ago." Donkeyskin kept her face hidden in the donkey's skin. "There's no one else here, my lord," she said in her rough voice. "Only me, and I'm certainly no beauty." Philippe left, but he couldn't forget what he'd seen. Over the following weeks, he became increasingly preoccupied with the mysterious woman in the attic. He questioned the servants, but no one knew anything about her. He watched the attic window, hoping to catch another glimpse, but Elara was now careful to keep her curtain drawn during her Sunday transformations. The prince's obsession grew until it began to affect his health. He stopped eating properly, stopped sleeping well, and spent all his time thinking about the mysterious beauty he'd seen so briefly. His mother, the Duchess, grew worried about her son and demanded to know what was troubling him. "I saw her, mother," Philippe said, almost fevered with longing. "The most beautiful woman I've ever seen, here in our own manor, wearing a dress the color of the sky itself. But I can't find her. She's vanished like a dream, and I can't rest until I know who she is." The Duchess, practical but loving, decided to host a series of balls. "We'll invite everyone from the estate and the surrounding villages," she announced. "Your mysterious lady will surely attend, and you'll find her then." 3 grand balls were planned, and all the household, including the servants, were invited to attend, though the lowliest servants like Donkeyskin were expected to help with preparations and stay mostly out of sight. On the night of the first ball, while the other servants were getting ready, Elara retreated to her attic room and summoned her magical trunk. She bathed carefully, arranged her hair in an elegant style, and put on her dress the color of the sky. When she looked at herself in her small mirror, she saw Princess Elara again, not Donkeyskin. With her face clean and her hair styled, she was completely unrecognizable as the dirty scullery maid. She slipped down to the ball, entering through a side door so no one would see where she came from. The moment she entered the ballroom, all conversation stopped. Everyone turned to stare at this magnificent stranger in the impossible dress that captured every shade of the sky. Prince Philippe saw her immediately, the woman from the window. He rushed to her side and asked her to dance. As they moved across the floor together, Philippe tried to learn who she was and where she came from, but Elara deflected his questions with mysterious answers and gentle smiles. She danced only a few dances, then slipped away before anyone could follow her, racing back to her attic where she quickly removed the beautiful dress, hid it in the magical trunk, and covered herself once more in the donkey skin. When servants came looking for Donkeyskin to help clean up after the ball, they found her in her usual disguise, pretending to have been asleep all evening. No one suspected that she and the mysterious beauty could be the same person. The second ball followed the same pattern. Elara appeared in her moon-colored dress, shimmering and ethereal, danced with Philippe while dodging his questions about her identity, then vanished mysteriously before anyone could discover who she was. By the third ball, Philippe was desperate to discover the identity of his mysterious visitor. He stationed guards at every exit and told them to follow the woman in the beautiful dress when she left. But Elara, wearing her sun-colored dress that blazed like captured sunlight, was clever. She saw the guards and knew she needed to escape more quickly than before. In her haste to flee before being caught, Elara lost one of her delicate dancing slippers on the stairs. She couldn't stop to retrieve it without being captured, so she left it behind and continued her flight, reaching her attic room just in time to hide her dress and don her disguise before anyone arrived. Philippe found the slipper, a tiny, delicate shoe that clearly belonged to someone of refined breeding. He held it carefully, as if it were made of glass. "I will marry the woman whose foot fits this slipper," he announced. "She is the one who has captured my heart completely." The Duchess organized a search throughout the estate and the surrounding lands. Every woman of marriable age was asked to try on the slipper, but it fit no one. It was too small for some, too narrow for others, or simply the wrong shape entirely. Philippe grew more despondent with each failed attempt. Finally, the cook mentioned that there was one more person, Donkeyskin, the strange scullery maid. "But surely, Your Highness, you don't want to waste time with her. She's just a dirty creature covered in an old donkey hide." "Everyone must try," Philippe insisted, remembering his mysterious lady's words about looking beneath the surface to find true worth. When Donkeyskin was brought before the prince, still covered in her disguise, the courtiers laughed at the absurdity. This filthy servant could never be the elegant mystery woman. But when Elara extended her foot, a small, delicate foot that she'd kept clean despite her rough work, the slipper fit perfectly. The court gasped. Philippe stared in disbelief. "You," he whispered. "You are the mysterious lady from the balls?" Slowly, Elara reached up and removed the donkey skin that had hidden her identity for so many months. As the disguise fell away, Princess Elara stood revealed, dirty from her work, but unmistakably the beautiful woman from the balls. With help from sympathetic servants, she washed and dressed in her sun-colored gown, and the transformation was complete. "I am Princess Elara," she said clearly, her voice no longer rough but refined and musical. "I fled my own kingdom to escape a terrible fate. I hid myself in this disguise to stay safe, working as a servant while hoping to one day reclaim my true identity. I never expected to find love or acceptance here, but your kindness to even the lowest servants showed me that you were a man of true worth." Philippe was amazed, humbled, and more in love than ever. "You've been here all along, working in my household, and I never saw you. I'm ashamed that I didn't look more carefully at those around me, that I let you labor in such difficult conditions." "You couldn't have known," Elara said gently. "I hid myself deliberately. But your character showed through in how you treated everyone, even those you thought were beneath your notice. That's what made me dare to hope that you might accept me, not just as a princess, but as the person I truly am." The Duchess, moved by Elara's story and courage, welcomed her warmly. "You've proven yourself through your strength, your resourcefulness, and your integrity. Any woman who can survive what you've survived and still retain her kindness and dignity is exactly the kind of person I would want as a daughter." Word was sent to Elara's home kingdom, where it was discovered that the king, after his daughter's disappearance, had slowly recovered his reason. The shock of losing his daughter had broken through his grief-induced madness, and he had spent the intervening months in deep regret, searching everywhere for Elara to beg her forgiveness. When he learned she was safe and had found happiness, he wept with relief and remorse. He traveled to the Duchess's estate and fell to his knees before his daughter. "I was so wrong," he said, tears streaming down his face. "Grief twisted my mind into something monstrous. I failed you as a father in the worst possible way. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I beg for it nonetheless." Elara looked at her father, older now, humbled, genuinely remorseful, and found that despite everything she still loved him. "I forgive you, father," she said, though her voice was firm. "But I can never come back to live as I was before. I've changed. I've learned that I'm stronger than I knew, that I can survive on my own, and that my worth isn't determined by my title or beauty, but by my character and choices. I'm going to marry Prince Philippe and build a new life here." The king accepted this with gratitude, knowing he had no right to ask for more. He returned to his kingdom a wiser, more humble man, and worked to repair the damage his madness had caused. Elara and Philippe were married in a ceremony that celebrated not just their union, but Elara's journey from princess to servant to princess again. She wore her sun-colored dress, and the donkey skin was displayed as a symbol of transformation and survival, a reminder that sometimes we must hide our true selves to stay safe, but that we can emerge from even the darkest disguises stronger than before. As a princess and later a duchess, Elara never forgot her time as Donkeyskin. She treated all servants with respect and dignity, established fair wages and working conditions, and created programs to help young women in dangerous situations find safety and new opportunities. She used her position to protect others the way she'd had to protect herself. Years later, Elara would tell her own children the story of Donkeyskin, emphasizing the lessons she'd learned. That sometimes survival requires us to hide who we are, that there's no shame in doing whatever we must to stay safe, that our worth doesn't depend on how others see us, and that transformation, even painful transformation, can lead to strength and wisdom we never knew we possessed. The moral: when faced with danger or impossible situations, it takes courage to save yourself, even if it means losing your identity temporarily. Your true worth is not diminished by the disguises you must wear to survive. Sometimes we must hide ourselves to stay safe, but we should never forget who we truly are beneath the surface. And when we emerge from our trials, we are often stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than before. Trust yourself, do what you must to survive, and know that transformation, even through difficulty, can lead to a better future.